Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome to the first overly sarcastic productions video of 2024. History Hijinks, another dumb Italy story. So, I mean, that's not really that specific at all, so, I have nothing really to add at the beginning of this video. Plot twist, language is wacky, who knew? So with all of that out of the way, of course, original video will be linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will link to my Let's Play of the day, and with all that out of the way, let's get this thing actually started then, shall we?
When I started researching this video, I'd planned to do a breezy little run-through of 3 bite-sized stories about Italian history. I've done it before, and I thought it'd be a great way to start the year. Light, simple, silly, perfect. However,
you can't get any better.
The first of 3 topics, why Italian place names sound so goofy in English, I realized I had thoughts and a lot of angles to cover. So instead, welcome to what is functionally the background noise inside my brain whenever I say any place name in my videos. Because
I mean, it's not specifically Italian. I know a lot of places, if you say them with like the proper accent, they can sound like funny in like English, though I know that goes doubly if you know, not pronouncing them correctly. Like, I know one topic that I'm, semi-knowledgeable about, Lithuania. The number of times I've seen, like, purely English speakers pronounce the capital city as Vilnius instead of just Vilnius, it grinds my gears a little bit, I can just tell you that. And that's not even getting into the whole thing of if they're like calling it by its Polish name, which was Wilno, but it's just a whole other kettle of fish.
When you get a name like Firenze or Venezia, you say it and it makes you feel all classy. Oh, che bella parola, tanto elegante, sono alla moda. But then you bring it down to English and it's Florence and Venice, which is fine, but those aren't the same sounds at all. It's
no, not really.
Flat and smushy, which is the phonetic antithesis of what makes Italian sound so nice. Those silent E's on the end make the word feel like you gave up partway through. I mean, listen to how Roma becomes Rome. That one vowel difference robs us of a quarter of the word and half the drama. I wondered how on earth we got from that to this, and my first instinct was to blame French. This, being my first reaction, will obviously be proven correct because I don't know what foreshadowing is, but as a formality, let's do the rest of the video anyway.
Okay.
My logic was that the English names for Italian places look suspiciously similar to the French names. I mean, Rome, Milan, Florence, Venice, they just sound like they belong in French.
I mean, given that the language of the royal court in England was French for the longest time, of course, English took a whole bunch of French loan words. I know two examples, like pig and cow. The French words are beef and pork, or a French pronunciation of that. So they would refer to that in the royal courts, around dinner when they're talking about the meat that way, and that kind of migrated to normal English, where cow is the animal, cow and pig are the animal, while beef and pork are the meat from the animal, that sort of thing. God, I don't even know the number of other words that would be, that sort of same thing. I think, oh God, I'm forgetting a lot of the story, but I think it's sort of the same with the word admiral, where the original word that's based off of is from the Middle East or something. And then it was kind of picked up by the French. And then when it got to the English, they kind of misunderstood how the translation from one to the other worked. And they just took the whole word wholesale.
Surely the ironclad science of vibes would never lead me astray. I've studied French and Italian in school, visited both countries.
I mean, they're both Romance languages.
The technology of each language. French is further back in the throat, a little more consonant heavy, emphasis often on the last syllable. Italian, by contrast, has greater focus on open vowel sounds and more melodic
silent letters everywhere. Yeah.
Stress. That said, every language has its own aesthetic and poetic strengths, and
French
sounds are really pretty on French words. Paris sounds beautiful in its native language in a way the Italian Parigi just doesn't. So at this point in my brainstorming, I thought I had it. All I had to do was establish some context about how foreign names are traded between languages, go back through the history of French, Italian, and English to show how the languages developed, and then simply assume that my gut assessment would remain correct with no further nuance to undermine my flagrant Italian language bias.
Hubris intensifies, of course.
Am I laying it on thick enough? Let's find out. Allora, cominciamo con la linguistica. Now, the topmost layer of all this is the understanding that almost nobody calls other people what they call themselves in their native language.
Yeah, basic examples of that would be Turkey and China.
For a classic example, let's jump back to Italy's classical Roman past and their first interaction with Greece. Famously, not originally called Greece. The people who lived there called their homeland Hellas, or Hellada, and that's an endonym, a name people use for themselves in their own language. However, when the big macho Romans rolled into the southern Italian city of Cumae, the locals said they were colonists from the city of Graia. So the Romans stopped devoting additional brain space to anything other than ass-kicking and blanket categorized everyone like them as Graiki, which became the word Greek. This is an exonym, a name given by outsiders in a foreign language.
Really? So the reason we call Greeks Greeks and Greece nowadays is literally because of a group of people from one city. Okay, wow.
We're getting a little sidetracked from our stated purpose of Italy's story, but shush, Romans are Italians, get off my back. So the rest of Europe picked up calling them Graiki, and the exonym has stuck all the way to the present, but Hellas has another exonym from the opposite direction. See, from the eastern point of view, the nearest Greeks are in Ionia, so Assyrian and Phoenician records mention Ionia and Yadnana. Then later on, the Achaemenid Persians rolled up and called it Yauna, naming the rest of Greece the same thing. That name later morphed into Yunnan, and that one stuck. So to this day, speakers of Persian, Turkish, Arabic, Hebrew, and Hindi still refer to Greece with some form of Yunnan. Now let's not feel too bad about Greece here, because not only does this happen to everybody, but Greece takes the cake for pejorative exonyms, having literally invented the concept of a barbarian to describe people who weren't them. Okay, now we're getting off track from Italy, so allow me to remedy that rapidamente. That's the most basic form of linguistic name transfer. Some outsider comes around and creates a brand new name based on their experiences and opinions of a place or people, and understanding the context of those words can tell us as much about the speaker as the thing being named. But even within one linguistic lineage, original endonyms can diverge over time and ultimately become an exonym. So to understand the origin of Italian place names, we need to know the origin of Italian. So we're going back to Latin for a sec, because after the empire in the West splintered apart in the 400s AD, the provincial variety of Latin across Europe and North Africa got a lot more pronounced, quite literally, as local flavors of the language evolved in isolation and diverged without the influence of the empire. Meanwhile, medieval Greek was doing just fine because go-go gadget better empire, and because of that political stability, Greek remained remarkably consistent over a very long time in comparison. In any case, Latin's fragmentation gave us the modern Romance family of languages, often grouped as Portuguese, Spanish, French, Italian, and Romanian.
Wait, Romanian is a Romance language? I mean, I guess it comes with the name Romanian, but I had no idea that Romanian was classified as a Romance language. Huh, okay.
Everyone forgets Romanian. Don't forget Romanian. Be better. But it took a very long time before those modern national languages took shape. Spanish got its first grammar book in 1492, right at the end of the Reconquista, and Italy wasn't unified enough to have meaningful use for a standard national language until the late 1800s. And the further step of making everyone actually speak it took another several decades. Hey, wait a minute, is that gonna cause a problem for my stated thesis?
Gasp!
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. But in between the OG Latin and the modern Big Five, there were dozens of medieval Romance languages. Former imperial provinces in the Balkans and North Africa had their own Romance tongues that survived until they were superseded by Germanic, Slavic, and Arabic. Meanwhile, look past the Big Five now.
Oh god, that would be... Can you imagine a North African Romance language? Like, what would that even sound like? Like, would it take on some of, like, the more traditional, like, African language sounds? Or would... I know almost nothing about linguistics, so I'm not going to, make myself look stupid.
National languages, and there's more than 20 main branches. Iberia was home to Portuguese, Galician, Leonese, Castilian, which became modern Spanish, Aragonese, and Catalan. Then moving up the Mediterranean coast into France, we run into the southern Occitan, then Arpitan, and the northern Languedoc, which became modern French. Then there's Italy with the absolute highest density of languages. Gallo-Italic in the northwest, Venetian, Rito-Romance, Tuscan, Central Italian, Neapolitan, Sicilian, and Sardinian.
Which, I mean, it makes sense given that's where, like, the core of Rome is, so you'd have the most people, and then, of course, broke up into the most states. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense that you'd have the highest concentration of, like, different variants there, which is cool.
and most of those can be divided another 2 or 3 ways if you're feeling thorough. Contrary to how they're sometimes categorized, these are not dialects that have quirky little differences but are otherwise mutually understandable. These are whole-ass languages that evolved independently over more than 1,000 years, with their own influences, vocabulary, grammar constructions, and foundational pieces of literature.
Okay, so where did modern Italian come from then? That's what I'm starting to get curious about.
This makes sense when considering Italy was many countries for a very long time, all of them fiercely independent. Standard Italian only really became the standard in the 1900s, well after unification, and the tradition of local languages remains so strong to this day that most Italians are considered bilingual in Italian and local. Wait, hold on a second, this is getting kind of complex.
Wait, really? Okay. I mean, that still doesn't answer my question of where modern Italian comes from, but still.
More pronounced in the far north and south of the country with Venetian and Sicilian especially, but less common in the center of the country near Tuscany. That's because Standard Italian is primarily based on the Tuscan language popularized in literature by Petrarch, Dante, and Machiavelli. Okay, not so much Machiavelli, but he's my guy, so I gotta rep. I say all this to explain that languages are complicated, and this is roughly when it clicks that my beloved lingua italiana is a surprisingly modern development, and is potentially not the final arbiter of what things in Italy are called. See, the gap between Standard Italian and local languages has the fascinating consequence that most Italian place names are exonyms that don't match the local endonyms.
Of course. Wait, who made these exonyms? That was it the Italian government or was it? Okay.
For instance, Naples in Italian is Napoli, but in local Neapolitan, Napele. Palermo is the same in English and Italian. Amazing. No, in Sicilian, it's Palermo. Let's try Genoa. In Italian, that's Genova. In Ligurian, Zena. Great!
Wow, okay, that one's different.
Mantua in Italian is Mantova, but the Lombard for it is back to Mantua, just like Milano, where the Milanese drops the final vowel to become Milan again. Then Venezia. La mia bella Venezia. Cosa fai? Venisa. Oh no!
Of course you had to sound like Mario. Venice, okay.
Oh no! That sure sounds like French and English, and not at all like its Standard Italian counterpart. It was at this moment that I realized my premise was shattered. As it turns out, Italian is a wild card too. But my shock at the notion of...
Yeah, so basically what I'm learning here is that Italian isn't a language. It is 7 languages in a trench coat.
Eventually brought me to a more comprehensive understanding of these languages. From there, the question of why English pronounces Italian names like that is ultimately very simple. Early medieval French had exonyms for Italy derived from their Romance kingship and shared roots in Latin. Some turned out rather similar, Venice to Venisa, while others struck more closely to the original Latin, getting Florence from the OG Florentia, while Tuscan went rogue with Firenze. France in turn imported all that to early English by way of the Norman conquest, and each language continued to evolve and diverge over the following millennium, to the point where the French and English place names are not hideously more off base than the surprisingly large gap between Standard Italian and the local languages. Sure, I like the sound of Standard Italian quite well, but I can't pretend it's the only valid option. So to answer my original question, why are Italian names so weird in English? Because translation is tricky. Exonyms are weird in every language, and the Romance gang is one big vaguely Latinate exonym soup, even in their own countries. None of this is French's fault. Languages are just complicated, and localization is fine. If Venezia becomes Venice in English, cool. It's fine. I'm fine. Just give me a minute.
Right.
A Venice enthusiast doesn't speak fluent Venetian. God, I'm such a dumbass. Oh, wow, look at me. I love Italy so much. I can't even read Dante in the original Tuscan because I'm such a fake fan. Sure, I can tell the difference between Tuscan and Standard Italian on sight, but what's the point if I can't read it fluently? Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
Oh, God. You know what's funnily enough, this is the first video I've watched from them in a while where their name overly sarcastic productions like actually make sense. Like, I'm not saying that their videos haven't been good. They're always like really good. I love watching them. But this is the first one where the sarcasm is like really put on thick with this one, and I absolutely love it. I mean, I'm not going to even be able to. I'm not going to even pretend to try to like make sense of all of the stuff going on in Italy. I mean, talking about like borrowed words and stuff like that. You know, it's funny. People forget how complicated history can be because we say that like, oh, the modern world is, you know, complicated today. I wish I was a kid when everything was simple. But it's very much like the complication didn't just start. It's always been ongoing for literally thousands and thousands of years. And I had no idea that that there were technically so many Italian, not even dialects, but like straight up languages. Jeez, that is nuts. Yeah, so yeah, with all that out of the way, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day, and with all that out of the way, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.